Hi everyone and welcome to One Six Figure Focus, and in this video I'm going to outline 10 things that I love about the MCU. Let's get started. Over the last 14 years since its inception in 2008, the MCU, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has become a global entertainment phenomenon. It's provided us with some great movies, some great moments, some fantastic action scenes. So in this particular video, I'm going to outline the 10 things that I love about the MCU. Because chances are, if you're watching this, you're a 1/6 scale collector, and you've definitely heard the MCU, and chances are you are a fan. If you're not a fan, please let me know in the comment section down below. So I'm going to get started. The first thing that I love about the MCU is quite simply Iron Man, and I thought they really got the casting right here with Robert Downey Jr. I thought he did an excellent job, really embodied the role. He had that kind of, quick-witted, kind of cocky kind of persona down very well. Really enjoyed his portrayal of Tony Stark and what he did with Iron Man. Also, just Iron Man, the suit itself is just a really cool looking design with just that armored up red and gold look, or at least the classic versions looked like that. And even before the Iron Man film in 2008, I knew who Iron Man was. I think a lot of people did as well because, comics, or maybe you've seen toys or maybe cartoons of it, or let's face it, like there was loads of t-shirts, those kind of like vintage looking t-shirts that were going around. You would have seen them on coffee mugs, basically lunch boxes. Even before the MCU was a thing, or before Iron Man was released, he was out there. But I really liked not only Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal, but also the various different suit designs. And let's face it, they lend themselves so well to 6 scale collecting, because these die-cast pieces are phenomenal. If you've ever held a die-cast Iron Man in your hand, you see the detail, the engineering, the paint apps, everything that goes into it, just phenomenal. So the first thing I love about the MCU is just Iron Man itself, Robert Downey Jr.'s portrayal, and his story arc from 2008 until Endgame, and the different the kind of how he interacted with different characters and how he clashed heads with various different characters, and even like the kind of the on-screen chemistry between him and Chris Evans, in especially scenes like the end of Civil War. The second thing I love about the MCU was the casting. I mean, let's face it, Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, and Chris Hemsworth, fantastic casting. Really, I think they really got the casting right there from Iron Man, Thor, and Captain America. However, the caliber of the other actors in these movies, in this kind of cinematic universe, it's a very high standard. Whether you like the certain movies or not, just here from my list, you have Michael Douglas, you have Michael B. Jordan, you've Christian Bale, Chadwick Boseman, Angela Bassett, Forrest Whitaker, Sam Jackson. I mean, there are some, a lot of those, they're highly acclaimed actors. They're fantastic. They're really good at what they've done there. A lot of them have basically achieved either nominations or actual Academy Awards and Golden Globes and stuff like that. So the caliber of the casting was very high, and I think that's really important to get actually really good standard actors. Otherwise, they're not going to make this. Some of the of storylines and stuff like this have been pulled from comic books, so they're a bit like out there, and it's important that you have really good quality acting to kind of convey and convince the audience of what's going on, and convince them of the storyline. So I thought that the quality and the caliber of the cast who they chose, those actors, phenomenal job for the most part. The third thing, and one of the most impressive things about the MCU, is how all the different storylines interconnect. I mean, it took like the bones of 20 movies that all culminated in Endgame. So pretty much every single movie served some sort of little purpose, or whether it's to introduce a character or connect universes, or just lay the foundations for the payoff that we got in Endgame. I just love the fact that all the stories were leading to that one movie, that one point. Highly complex, highly complicated, really enjoyable to watch. And I just imagine like the boardroom or whatever, when all these different writers come together and they just have all these big massive characters and worlds and storylines and how they all interconnect. I found that really entertainment, how things interconnected and then finally paid off in Endgame. The fourth thing I love about the MCU is quite simply the action scenes and the special effects involved in bringing them to life. Scenes like Iron Man 1, Gamera, his first time really out, the first time we really see Iron Man out in the Mark III suit, taking out a few few bad guys, or maybe the car chase in Black Panther, or the massive battle or war at the end of Infinity War or Endgame. The action scenes in these movies are fantastic. The fifth thing I love about the MCU is the music. The original score and the soundtrack and songs that they chose to go with some of these action scenes. Sometimes some of the songs they chose you wouldn't think would actually go with these comic book science fiction style action scenes, but they actually work really well. I mean, in fairness, have you ever listened to the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and 2 soundtrack? These songs shouldn't work in this context, but they absolutely do. Or the original score, say like for some of the scenes at the end of No Way Home, or even Portals at the end of Endgame. So the original score written for these movies and the songs that they chose along the way to bring the action scenes to life, they just absolutely nailed it. Number 6 is comic book lifts. Obviously, the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, has its roots in comic books. Some of these comic books going back as far as like the 50s, even the 40s. So to bring these characters to life, but make it work on screen, they had to do what I call like lifts, but they're not straight lifts. They don't literally take the comic book character and their outfit from the comic and put them straight into the screen, because a lot of the time that actually wouldn't work. They have done it to kind of give a nod to comic book characters. For example, in Loki, they took classic Loki from the comic books and put him in as a version of Loki, and that worked really well because it worked with the context of the multiverse. But however, what they tend to do, and what I've noticed they tend to do, is they tend to take aspects of the appearance of the comic book character from the comic book and then run them through like a reality filter and then put them into the MCU to kind of, you know, modernize them to make them work better. For example, just my go-to example would be the Hobgoblin, the MCU Hobo Goblin from No Way Home. It had the hood, but it wasn't just like a hood like it was in the comic. It was originally a hoodie which got damaged in the battle and it made it look all torn, so it served as that purple hood. He also had the satchel with the pumpkin bombs and stuff like that, and obviously the green outfit. So it kind of looked reminiscent of the appearance of the Goblin in the comic books, but it wasn't a straight look. It a straight lift. It had more of a kind of a modern look that worked well on the screen. So I like the way that they use the source material but don't do straight lifts. They just give a nod and they kind of, you know, paired it with modern design and stuff like that to make it work really, really well. I really like how they did that. Number 7 is simply the cinematography. There are some stills, there's some like scenes from these movies that you could literally just take a still out and it would look like a fantastic poster. One of the ones I always think of is Thanos' ship coming through the clouds in Endgame, or even where Cap is on his own just before everyone comes back through the portals and he's facing down the entire army. Some of these things would just make a fantastic looking poster, so top-notch cinematography. Number 8 is the humor. You know, throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's the humor is kind of it's part of the journey, really. Like I do tend to lean towards the more serious films, but every now and then, if you have a kind of serious part, it's nice to have some sort of humor in them. And I think a lot of the movies, they got the balance right. However, you look at something like Thor: Love and Thunder, in my own opinion, they kind of went a bit too humorous there and it didn't quite work. But more often than not, the MCU has some fantastic humor along the way to break up those kind of serious or darker parts. Number 9 is the fact that the MCU, for the most part, is family friendly, and it's quite clever. I always think back to the film Shrek. If you watch Shrek as a kid and then watch Shrek as an adult, you'll see two different versions, and it's very clever because in order for that to work, you have to have humor that kind of adults would get, that the kids don't get, because you want to keep it appropriate, but also you have to entertain the kids. So it's quite clever to mash like almost two different films into one to entertain children but also entertain adults. And I think at times the MCU does that actually quite well because they're family films. There's some dark parts, but they never go too dark and too adult, but then there's some lighter humor as well to kind of keep everyone happy. So I thought for the most part they're family friendly films. You have the action, you have the deeper storylines, but at the same time it never gets too gory or too grotesque as well, so it's actually quite clever, so it keeps everyone involved. And last but not least, the 10th thing I love about the MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is the 1/6 scale Hot Toys collectibles that have emerged from it. There are some fantastic, highly screen accurate, highly detailed, quality engineered figures with fantastic head sculpts and paint apps. Let's face it, if you're watching this right now, you're probably a 6 scale collector. So hats off to the MCU for providing us some fantastic source material which have given rise to some fantastic hot toys. That's pretty much the end of the video. If you want to support the channel, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Let me know your top 10 or even some things that you really liked about the MCU. What brings you back to those films? You can also follow me on Instagram and follow me on Twitter. That's it. That's the end of the video. See you in the next one. Good luck.